The story of Dido is a complex and fascinating tale that needs to be put in the context of the 1,000 years of history that took place during Homer's Odyssey and Iliad, as well as Virgil's Aeneid. And this video that you're about to watch covers it all in just 11 minutes, while providing lots of humorous history along the way.
Dreams can be powerful things. They can change history, even change us as people. Just ask Scrooge. He had a heck of a fever dream and came out of it with a shiny new soul. Dido dreamed too. She was the queen of Carthage, way back when there was a Carthage, back in the 9th century BC. Her story is full of heartbreak and triumph and tragedy and courage, so it seems kind of rude to say this, but there's a chance she didn't actually exist. We know about her from a couple historical accounts, including one by Virgil, the Aeneid, an epic poem he wrote to honor the Emperor of Rome by providing a consistent storyline that led from the Trojan War all the way to the Roman Empire. But these accounts were written long after her story supposedly took place, so, secondary sources and all. On the other hand, she's on money in Tunisia, so there's that in her favor. But here's the gist of her story either way. Dido was living in Tyre, her hometown, and the most happening place in the area. She was married to Zacchaeus, a wealthy high priest. All was fine. Summers by the sea, plenty of Netflix and chill, until Zacchaeus got murdered by an unknown assassin. That's when Dido had a dream. Tossing and turning in bed one night, she saw the image of her dead husband speaking to her from the great beyond. Not just speaking, but solving crimes. His murderer, Zacchaeus told her, was none other than Dido's own brother, Pygmalion, or as Dido would thereafter refer to him, Pygmelon. Also, Zacchaeus told Dido to leave Tyre, which was fine with her. She didn't want to stay there anymore anyway, what with Pygmelon all about the place. And so she dreamed another dream, not an asleep-in-your-bed kind, but the kind we all have at one time or another, the dream of starting over somewhere else. With some attendants, kindred spirits, and fellow Pygmelon haters, Dido set sail out across the Mediterranean Sea. There she is now, at the bow of her ship, windswept, noble, determined, looking sharp in her Bedford cord tunic. Oh, there were perils on the journey, to be sure. Seasickness, a couple holes in the boat, and of course the Kraken. But they made their way bravely along, singing sea shanties and eating a lot of fish. A day or so later, they didn't travel far, sorry if we implied otherwise, they reached Cyprus. There they took on some more passengers and probably picked up some seafood seasoning. This isn't recorded in history anywhere, but there were probably scoffers who threw rocks at the exiles, and one smarmy fellow who called the ship Dido's Folly, while chuckling under his breath and twisting his mustache snidely. But Dido could twist her mustache too. That's not at all what we meant to say. We meant to say that Dido probably went up to the scoffers all badass and said, "I bundle your hot air and use it to propel my sails." Then the scoffers and their mustaches went away, and history itself shamed them by forgetting all about them. After a bit, they set off again. Dido at the bow, seasickness, Kraken, etc. But this time to a much farther destination, the distant shores of what is now Tunisia, in what would later be known as North Africa, on what would later be known as planet Earth, which would later still be renamed to planet... Oh, sorry, we can't reveal that yet. They got there, a little scurvied, maybe, but not too much the worse for wear. They were happy to see land that they wanted a piece of. So Dido petitioned the local king for a plot somewhere. Thinking himself pretty clever, the king told Dido she could have land, sure, as much as she could cover with, say, that old ox hide hanging on the wall. Dido agreed. Then she cut up the oxhide into really, really thin strips and used them to encircle the earthen half of a hill alongside the coastline, claiming in the process a pretty big space and giving later mathematicians a whole new reasoning tool, Dido's problem. Go explore that sometime, it's fascinating. And atop that hill, Dido dreamed her biggest dream. She platted out a whole city, put up some welcome signs, and called the place Carthage, which we think translates to, mess with the ox, you get the horns. This was all around 814 BC or so, just for a time reference. Under Queen Dido's rule, Carthage grew to be one of the most important power centers of the Mediterranean. Pride of place was high among the residents of Carthage. In fact, through extensive research, we have uncovered what we believe to be the original Carthage fight song, sung as soldiers sailed away to battle, and also at football games and quinceañeras. We are Carthage! We are Carthage! We are Carthage, hear us roar! We are Carthage evermore! We are Carthage! We are Carthage! Incidentally, we're well dressed, big red C's across our chest. We are Carthage! We are Carthage! And that's all you need to know. Also, don't eat yellow snow. We're a bit unsure of the translation on that last line, but the community spirit shines through nonetheless. Queen Dido was at her peak, even being profiled in a 30 under 30 article in Sandal and Saffron magazine. Sorry to digress, just when things are getting good. But geopolitics is about to provide a plot twist, and we want you to be ready. As chronicled by the ancient poet Expositionus, the classical Mediterranean world was racked with war, particularly the Trojan War. In brief, Prince Paris of Troy had abducted Queen Helen of Sparta. Helen, according to Homer, was the most beautiful woman in the world. Of course, there were fewer people in the world back then, but it was still a distinction of note. And those 1,000 ships that her face launched, they weren't proverbial. Those were the ships filled with Greek soldiers coming to rescue her. The Greeks all but homesteaded Troy for a decade, but could never quite get their hooks in it. Finally, someone had the idea to build a giant fake horse, hollow inside, where soldiers could sequester themselves, leave it outside the front door, ring the doorbell, then make a big show of sailing off, waving goodbye, and singing Auld Lang Syne. Several scoffers threw rocks at the horse and twisted their mustaches and called it Sparta's folly. But it worked. The Trojans opened the gate, brought the horse inside even though it clashed with the curtains, and Troy was thus lost to the Greeks. Most of the Trojan soldiers died in the ensuing chaos, but not all of them. He strutted, most likely, because that's what heartbreakers do. He strutted down the main street of Carthage on his way to introduce himself to Queen Dido, with his sword and shield and chiseled jawline, acting all main character-y, which actually he was. We are technically in a subplot of his hero's journey, the aforementioned Aeneid, but whatever. We heard that he had been a leader in the Trojan army and had escaped with his men after the horse incident. Phoenicius said that Philonia heard that he had been sent on a long, arduous journey across the Mediterranean Sea until the goddess Juno brewed up a storm that tossed him and his men around for several stanzas, until they shipwrecked off the coast of Carthage. And not that we care, but what was his name again? His name was Aeneas. Dido fell for Aeneas at first strut. She welcomed him to Carthage. They feasted on figs and pomegranates and Punic porridge. They began to be seen all about town together, Carthage's first power couple. They talked for hours into the night, swapping stories of their seafaring days. OMG, did he say anything about us? What did he say? Tell us everything. And suddenly, unwittingly, Queen Dido was caught in a new, uncomfortable dream, torn between loyalty to her dead husband, Sychaeus, while trembling with passion for Aeneas. Or, as Virgil poetically put it, unhappy Dido burns and wanders madly through the city like a deer struck by an arrow, which, unaware, a shepherd hunting with his weapons has pierced from afar in the Cretan woods, leaving the flying steel lodged in her side without knowing it. She runs through the forest and glades in flight, but the fatal shaft clings to her flank. And as we less poetically put it, she was crushing hard. Of course, up overhead, or, well, technically atop Mount Olympus, the gods were watching all of this, because it was the era of mythology, and when they weren't arguing over who would get a month named after them, the gods did a lot of watching and a lot of messing around. With humans, we mean. With each other too, it seems, but that's another episode or two. This was not the ending they had in mind when they manipulated Virgil into writing the Aeneid. No, Aeneas was not to marry Dido and be the co-honcho of Carthage, as much as he might want to. The gods desired another outcome. Aeneas was to carry forward the Trojan spirit and found a new city, later to be known as Rome, in what would later be known as Italy on planet Earth, yada yada. We're just gonna rip the Band-Aid off here. Aeneas left to found the Roman Republic, and Dido, heartbroken, the two loves of her life both lost forever, killed herself. Carthage didn't fare so well either, but let's quit while we're behind. Sorry. But there's more to say, because dreams never really die, and in a way, Dido the dreamer didn't either. She became legendary, literally, appearing in stories and poems through the ages, carved into statuary, painted on pottery, sung about, heralded, and adored. And given the greatest gift history can bestow on a person, real or not, she would be remembered. Take that, Pigmelon.
Thank you so much for watching this video. Don't forget to subscribe to the Goofy Historians channel and sign up for our Patreon to receive lots more humorous history content. Goodbye!